Hi everyone and welcome to Blackwood Engage Layout and the first update for 2023. Now, camera is currently pointing at the area of track work that I was working on just prior to Christmas, where the overhead catenary gantries are, or portals. And that section, as I said just before Christmas, is more or less finished. There was one thing missing, which was a signal, and that signal has in actual fact appeared. The signal was made by Absolute Aspects, and it's a 3-aspect signal with a route indicator on the top. And if I just zoom in, you can just see the signal sitting under the gantry, just there, right in front of us. Now, as you can see, the signal is not lit at the moment. There is a reason why it's not lit. It is working, it has been checked, it is working, but the whole reason for this update is really to talk about signal automation. Now, I did say in my last update that I was going to be working on the other side of the road bridge, which is just behind the camera here. So what I'm going to do is I'll turn the camera around and we'll see whether or not I've been up to anything. Now, as we look at the area on the other side of the road bridge, a lot of you will probably be thinking to yourselves, well, he's not really done very much. All that appears to have happened is a couple of signals appear to have been planted, and there is a little bit of trunking has been put in, which if I use my custom pointer, that's the trunking just along there. And that is absolutely correct. That is actually all that's actually happened on this side of the road bridge. However, a lot has actually been happening underneath the baseboard, and the clue is probably the two signals that we're actually looking at here. Now, you can clearly see the train has obviously gone through one of the signals, and one signal is obviously lit and one signal isn't. The signal on the left hand side hasn't been wired up yet, but the signal on the right hand side that is currently showing the orange or the yellow aspect is wired up. Now, what makes this signal a little bit different from the other 7 or 8 signals I have in the layout is that this signal is actually fully automated. There is no switch on a control panel that is controlling the signal. The signal is being controlled by the locomotive, and very handily the Class 66 goes through, and you can see it has now tripped the signal back to red. Now, that is not the only signal that has become automated. This signal has also been automated, and the two signals are in actual fact now communicating with each other. I have invested in a bit of electronic wizardry from a company called Heathcote Electronics, who make a multitude of electronic boards for controlling trains, signals, points, etc. And just let that train rumble through there, and again you'll see the signal has tripped immediately back to red. So what I'll try and do is explain one of the advantages of actually having these signals automated. Obviously the signal that we're looking at just now, there were wires that obviously had to run back to a rotary switch so that I could manually change the colour lights on the signal. Obviously now that there's an electronic board underneath the baseboard, that is actually doing the manual switching of the signals automatically. So this is one of the boards that I have invested in, and this is a mass sequencer. It's really quite a simple bit of electronic kit. The two detectors that you see sitting up there, those are the infrared detectors. Those fit between sleepers on the track. And if we turn over on this side here, there is a range of connectors there, and that is where the signal wires actually go into. So your red, your green, your yellow, if you double yellow, or if you've got a route indicator, etc., and the common negative, they all go in along here. And on this side here, you've got another row of connectors, and essentially that is for your to power the actual board. So we have the positive and the negative, and then there are a number of other connections in here for sending and receiving information from other boards. The whole unit simply screws underneath the actual baseboard. You can see there's a couple of pre-drilled holes there, and you get lots of different versions of these particular boards. Now this, as I say, is just a mass sequencer. When we were looking at the 3 aspect with the route indicator on, it is also a mass sequencer, but it is a mass sequencer with a route indicator built into it, and it also has got what we call extended wires. Now the reason when we mean about extended wires, it's actually these infrared detectors. As you can see here, the infrared detectors are fixed directly to the board, and as we all know, that when we come to do things under baseboards or fit motors or do something or other, there is usually either a bit of baseboard framing, or there could be a point motor or something in the way. Now as you can see, while this electronic board is not massive, if you've got baseboard framing, it may be that you can't get the actual electronic board close to your signal. So Heathcote Electronics provide boards where these connectors are at the end of a long lead. So you can obviously get your infrared connectors onto the track, and then this board can actually be located in an area of the baseboard that is convenient. Okay, that is basically it. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as feeding 2 wires in to give power to the board, and then wiring up your signal. The other thing which I would also say is there is this small round unit here. That's a timer, and you can alter the time delay between the aspects changing, so going from red back to yellow back to green, etc. That can be controlled by moving the actual switch there with a screwdriver. You can run it, I think it's from about 10 seconds up to about 80 seconds, and that is what you get when you buy the mass sequencer. The first signal that I showed you is not controlled by a mass sequencer. It is controlled by what they call an IRDASC-4, an IRDASC-4, and the board is identical in size. It looks almost identical in size. The only thing it doesn't have is it doesn't have a timer, but everything else is more or less the same. And all that happens is that the mass sequencer is, if you like, is the last link in a line of control panels. So the mass sequencer basically sends all the signals back to all the previous boards. So on the mass sequencer that is currently installed, there is a single wire runs from the send connection, which is one of these connections there, and it simply runs back to the IRDASC-4, which is the previous signal, and it goes into the receive connection, and that's what connects the two boards together, and that allows the information to go from one board to the other, and it operates just exactly like a real signal. So when the train passes over the first set of infrared detectors, signal goes to red. It will stay in red until the train has passed the next signal, and when the next signal goes to red, the previous signal, it won't automatically go back to yellow. There will be a delay of maybe 3 or 4 seconds. Then it will display yellow to indicate that the next signal is still showing red, and then it will cycle through the sequence, and that's essentially how the units work. The great thing is there are no wires having to be taken from each signal back to a control panel and back to manual switches, because the units themselves obviously do all the switching for you, so you actually save in wiring. So we've now come underneath the layout. Hopefully you can see this. So what we have here is an IRDASC 4 board, and first of all you can see the wires coming down from the signal, and they are all wired in along here. It's all very, very clearly marked, and then on the connections at the front you'll see a grey and a black wire, and that is simply the positive and the negative power supply coming into the board. And then you can see this blue wire here, and that is the wire that runs to the next signal, so that's so the two boards can in actual fact communicate. So as you can see, there's not a lot of wires. It's actually pretty neatly done. Okay, looking back at this first signal, that's the signal that's controlled by the IRDASC 4 board. As you can see, it's displaying green, and if I come up here you'll see the point. The route is actually set for the train to obviously go right the way through there, and if we come all the way back around here, try not to get you too seasick, you'll see the next signal is obviously showing green as well. So obviously if the point was set against this route, then that signal would not in actual fact be showing green. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the camera down. What I'll do is I'll now actually manually move the point, and what you should see is that signal should automatically go back to red. And yes, it went back automatically to red. And the reason it is doing that is because I have fitted a single accessory switch on the point motor. So the send and receive wire, that's the blue wire that was underneath, it actually splits on that accessory switch before continuing back to the next signal up the line. So when you switch the point, it breaks the contact, and essentially it tells the board that the route is no longer set for that signal, and hence it should display a red aspect. And if we actually come up and we go to the next signal along the line, it will actually still be showing the green aspect. So as you can see, it's still showing its green aspect. And if I come back, and apologising for the noise because it's decided to actually pour its rain outside. Now if I come back, there's obviously two signals, and the same thing will happen with the second signal once it's actually wired up. If I come round here, when I change the point, that signal which would have been showing red, that's this one here, which I know is not wired up, so you have to kind of do a bit of pretending that it's wired up. When I change that point to set this signal to red, this signal would have automatically gone from red to green to indicate that the route is now actually clear. At the same time, some of you may be thinking, well, what happens if you're wanting to run bi-directionally? Because obviously this line here in front of me, this is a bi-directional line. Well, that is also catered for, because on the set of crossovers which are further back, there will be an accessory switch added to one of those points, and when those points change, they will do exactly the same thing. They will send a signal back to the IR-4 board to indicate that there's going to be a train running in the opposite direction from the signal, and it will automatically trip the signal to red. So you won't see a train running in the wrong direction and the signal behind the train still showing green. So that's these two signals here. Let's go and have a wee quick look at the 3 aspect with the route indicator. Okay, so the signal with the route indicator. When I change the points leading into the loop at the top end of the layout, that will automatically set the route indicator to come on, and a yellow aspect will show. So we'll run a train and we'll just watch that happening. Train is now approaching. As you can see, route indicator is on, and train will trip it back to red. The timing function has now started, and I have set this so that the train can get right into the actual loop, and then, as I say, I click the point back and the signal will again or it will go back eventually to show the green. As you can see, it's starting to cycle through, so there is enough room to get a train off the main line with the signal not reverting back to green until you've actually changed the points. Now, the other thing which has been built into this signal is again for reverse running, because if a train was coming out, because obviously this is bi-directional again, then you would not be expecting the signal to be showing green. And again, using single accessory switches, Pico accessory switches connected to one of the solenoid point motors, you can send the signal back to the mass, in this case the mass sequencer, and it will then know to set the signal back to red. So if we imagined for 1 minute that the train was going to be coming back out of here and it's going to of course cross back over, you'd expect the signal to be at red. So when I change the points, you'll see the signal has automatically gone back to red, and it will actually stay in red at the count. The timing doesn't work for this. It's almost like a kill switch, which is another big advantage of these units. You can have these, if you like, a kill switch, and you can basically tell the unit, look, forget about all the instructions you're getting from various or previous units. For this unit here, I just want you to display a red aspect, and that's obviously useful in stations, because obviously in stations, and especially in Blackwood station, there's a lot of bi-directional running, and for the signals that are actually at the end of the platforms, they really probably need to be stay on red all the time. So when they get automated, they'll be kind of semi-automated in that there will have to be an actual switch that I can basically flip and say just stay in red, and when trains are going to move through signals, I can flip the switch and the signal becomes automatic, and it will obviously then go through the timing sequence. But that in a nutshell is what I've actually been doing over the last 3 or 4 weeks. I've had to do quite a bit of reading up, and I will say the documentation that you get from Heathcote Electronics, it's not fancy, it's just written on A4 paper, it's all typed up, it's got some colour diagrams on it, but it's written in plain man's English. They don't try to bamboozle you with technical terms or electronic terms. The cost of these units, they aren't massively expensive. They're around about £20 per unit. Hopefully that's giving you a bit of an insight into what you can do. If I can do some electronic wizardry, then I'm sure most of you can do. It really isn't complicated. It's really quite simple, and it's quite fun to do. And it adds another dimension, because it means that when I'm standing outside of the layout watching the trains going round, the signals automatically change, because obviously normally when I'm doing it, the signals would just sit in green. They would never ever change, because I'm standing outside watching the trains. So it adds another dimension to the running of the trains. And talking of running of the trains, let's get the trains running and let's have a running session.